So good morning, everyone. Today we are going to cover Chapter 8. Chapter 8 covers DNA replication. So we talked about it a little bit last time, and cell division. Replication refers to cloning. So before I get started, I want to remind you again of central dogma of biology. Anybody knows what the word dogma means?
I think what it means everything that has to do with biology, right?
Yeah, so it means principles. It's just basically highlighting something that's very important. So principle, dogma means same thing. So central dogma of biology is first step we have is the replication. So DNA being able to replicate itself, and we learned that that's also called cloning. So replication. So that's the first step. And you guys know this as cloning. And then it goes from DNA to RNA. And I want to ask you guys if you guys remember what this process is called. Going from DNA to RNA.
Transcription.
Transcription. And then going from RNA to protein.
Translation.
Translation. So this is central dogma of biology. I will ask you this on the exam. And people who are responsible for finding this out is Watson and Crick with the help of Rosalind Franklin. So they were so egotistical about what they found, they decided to name a central dogma. So basically everything depends on this. There are some topics of biology we won't be able to cover those topics unless we talk about this. So so DNA should be able to copy itself, that's replication. I will give you the steps for this today. And then the information gets copied from DNA into RNA, and that contains instructions to make the protein in the cytoplasm. So that's the central dogma of biology. So your cells, they are rapidly dying and being replaced. In the past, we talked about HeLa cells. So I said that you can still buy some HeLa cells today if you want. So it doesn't mean that those cells are not dying. They are dying, but they're being replaced. So before they die, they divide, make new cells. And then when those cells are about to die, they make new cells, they divide. So your cells are rapidly dying. Your skin cells, for example, your skin cells are coming off almost every day, and then the layer below that layer starts to grow. So some of these, if someone has maybe some type of skin condition, they're taking some of these medications, especially these days, they talk about retinoids a lot. And you use those retinoids on your skin for maybe scarring. What it's doing is it's basically causing the cells to grow very, very fast. So it gets replaced very, very quickly, and you get rid of those scars. So that's what they're doing with the skin products. And your red blood cells. Your red blood cells, they don't divide, they die, and then your bone marrow makes new red blood cells. So if you get a cut, one way to repair that cut is to, through the cell division. So cell division produces a continuous supply of replacement cells. Cell division also has a role in reproduction. So when we talk about reproduction, we're going to talk about mitosis and meiosis today. And then growth. So that's cells dividing and dividing and dividing and getting bigger and bigger and bigger. That's growth. And then development. I even talked about development before when I said the baby's head is gigantic compared to the rest of their body. But as they start to grow, their head kind of remains, the same size, or doesn't grow as much as their body. And that's called development. So reproduction, growth, and development all requires cell division. So I'm going to give you some definitions. So first thing we have is mitosis. So here, if you look on this picture, so on this photo, it says mitosis here, but before that you have a zygote. So mitosis is cell division. So it's referring to cell division. And it's asexual. So cells are dividing and becoming, maybe in this baby, some cells divide and become the brain cells, others become the heart cells, others become the liver cells. And then there's another term that's called meiosis. This is referring to sex cells, and your sex cells are known as gametes. So sperm and the egg, when they meet, so when the sperm fertilizes the egg, you get a zygote. Then the zygote starts to divide through mitosis. So mitosis is cell division, so cells dividing. Meiosis is referring to making the sex cells, which are sperm and the egg cells. In plants, this might refer to as spores, making the spores. So a fertilized egg is known as a zygote, means sperm and egg meet, and that gives you a zygote, and that's the fertilized egg. That fertilized egg is going to divide by mitosis. Once it divides, the fetus starts to grow. So you started as a zygote, then that zygote started dividing and dividing and dividing, and now you're a mature adult. So some of those cells after division became your heart cells, your liver cells, your intestines, your brain cells, and then you became an adult. And then you make the gametes. So if you're a male, you're going to make sperm, female, they make eggs. And once these gametes meet, there's fertilization, that's gonna give you a zygote, and this whole cycle continues. So this includes countless cells, but this is going to have identical DNA. So you're going to get 23 chromosomes from one of your parents, and that's also the test 23andMe. That's where it comes from. So each mature individual produces sex cells by another form of cell division called meiosis. So meiosis, again, sex cells, mitosis, cell division, and sex cells combine at fertilization. Any questions for meiosis and mitosis? I will give you the steps for these as well. Next chapter is meiosis. Today we're going to cover mitosis. Okay, so the purpose of mitosis, it has many roles. First one, it says to grow and develop, referring to this picture. So grow, it's the cells are dividing, and development refers to it, the cells becoming the nerve cells, the muscle cells, the cardiac cells. So that's development. It repairs tissues. If you get a cut, cell division happens, and the cell's going to be replaced. Your skin cells in this case. Regenerate lost body part. This is an amphibian. Some of the amphibians, so it's regrowing the tail. They're able to regrow some of the body parts, and that happens through mitosis. And then another one is to reproduce asexually. So some of the organisms, so if you look under the pond, maybe on the bottom of the pond, you see amoeba. They might be able to just, start dividing, and they divide from one cell to two cells. Now there are two organisms. And really good example of that is sea anemone. So let me see if I can show you an example. So this you might have seen in Finding Nemo. So what happens to sea anemone, if there is enough food and whatever nutrients that, whatever is needed, it just starts to split. So the way it splits, it's basically ripping in half. So half side is crawling in this way, in this direction, other half is crawling in this direction, and it just rips itself in half. So you have two now from one. So this is a good example. So if you see maybe a lot of sea anemones on a rock, maybe there was only one to start with, then they start ripping in half, and then the next one rips in half, next one rips in half. And that's a type of asexual reproduction where the cells just divide in half. So that's reproduction asexually. Can you guys remember, I told you this during chapter 1. What is one benefit of sexual reproduction versus asexual reproduction?
Diversity, mutations.
So variation, you get more variation. Mutations happen, for different reasons. We'll talk about that in a little bit too. But it gives you more variation. If it's asexual reproduction, you're gonna have exact same DNA or the genetic information as this cell for this cell. But if the DNA is coming from two different people, it's gonna give you more variation. And then there is a term, vocabulary word, apoptosis. And this word means pre-programmed cell death. So your red blood cells, they live, I think, 120 days, and then they die, and then bone marrow replaces those red blood cells. So this is called cell death. So on this picture, you can see this webbing. These are living cells in between. So you can see this webbing for this duck. And ducks need this webbing to swim. So this stays. So this is how they're born, and then the webbing stays. And this is a chicken, and there's webbing when they're born, but then it goes away because they don't need it for a function. So these cells die. The chickens don't swim. So this webbing dies, and because there's no function for it. Another thing we're gonna learn when we get to evolution chapter is, if there's no function for it, it kind of goes away. So the structure goes away. So apoptosis is pre-programmed cell death. So all the cells eventually they're going to die, but before they die, they're going to copy the genetic information and they're going to divide.